We brothers from the same projects that got together to work on one project, to escape the projects. Let's do this, let's do this, let's do that, and it's Wu-Tang and it's just one big thing. It's like, it took years to build.
The special thing about Wu-Tang being 8 or 9 guys was each one was a rapper who can represent his own individual self within that crew. They were the example for all of us, because we didn't really see that before. Like, more power to them, and show love to them, respect them. You know, they're honorable. They gave us incredible skill. They gave us incredible poetry, and it gave us music that no one's touching to this day. It's timeless.
We knew it was gonna hit because it was too many of us. People didn't understand it at first, you know what I'm saying? We even took that and tried to shop it. You know what I'm saying? They didn't understand it at first because they hey, a bunch of black guys, they wanna be Grandmaster Flash, Furious 5, you know what I'm saying? That's how they took it. But watch me now, you know what I'm saying? And when we did Protect Your Neck, came out that, I knew it was gonna be that joint that's gonna make us rise.
And Wu-Tang, we came from, let's put it this way, we were what people identified with every day in the streets. We weren't the people that were on the MTV, Yo MTV Raps crowd, things like that. And to see someone up there that looked like you, dressed like you, didn't have money, and was struggling, and all they talked about was the struggle, people love that shit, man. They always root for the underdog, you know? And our first tour was a 15-passenger fucking van. We got per diems every fucking day, $35.
Fantastic?
Huh?
Fantastic was the van?
No, I don't know what the van was. It was just a big van, a 15 passenger, you know, with
the
rows of
regular
seats.
shit, the regular
you
shit.
know,
Okay.
we sleeping in these shits, traveling from state to state, putting the grind in.
Right.
And at the end of the day and shit, it made us the artists that we are today. We didn't get it handed to us. We had to go out there and get that shit.
They respect a brother whose shit got to build up by itself. It has to have a start. You know what I'm saying? That's start from the bottom in order to get to the top. You know what I'm saying? And once you get to the top, it's only one way to go, and that's down.
We ain't trying to go down, though.
Word up. So
know
we
what
just
I'm
gonna keep elevating,
Keep
constant
rising.
elevation. Ain't no topping this to us.
Basically, man, Wu-Tang represents a sword style of rhyming, man. The Wu is the way, the Tang is the slang, the clan represents the family, man. We call it a sword style because we are lyrical assassins, and we are aware that the tongue is symbolic to the sword. You know what I'm saying? So we work with it like that.
In the world of hip-hop, there are producers, and then there are architects. Between 1994 and 1997, one man didn't just make beats, he built an empire. That man was RZA, the mastermind behind the Wu-Tang Clan. During this short explosive window of time, RZA produced and arranged 6 solo albums, each from a different Wu-Tang member, all while planning and executing the group's multi-phase domination of the rap game. But how did he do it? How did one man maintain that kind of focus, creativity, and execution? This is a story of discipline, sacrifice, and obsession. This is how RZA became the monk behind boards. After the release of Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers in 1993, RZA proposed a radical idea to his brothers. He told them, this wasn't just ego, it was strategy. RZA didn't just want to release solo albums. He wanted to sequence a musical universe where each member's projects felt like an extension of a larger narrative. In his mind, Wu-Tang wasn't just a group, it was a movement. To execute this plan, he demanded full creative control, and incredibly, the clan agreed. For the next 4 years, RZA would enter what he called his mental chamber, isolating himself almost completely to work on his music. RZA's daily routine between 1994 and 1997 was closer to a Shaolin monk than a hip-hop producer. He woke up around 6 a.m., beginning each day with meditation and spiritual study. Whether it was the Quran, Taoist texts, or supreme mathematics, RZA treated his morning like a mental gym. He believed that keeping his mind sharp was just as important as sharpening his drum samples. By 9 a.m., he was in the studio, his basement in Staten Island, known only as the Chamber. There were no distractions, no parties, no women, no entourage, just machines, crates of records, and raw vision. He locked in for 12 to 16 hours a day, building drums, flipping obscure soul samples, and directing clan members like a film director. Ghostface Killer once said, RZA ate little, pizza, Chinese takeout, maybe fruit and water, and that was it. No drugs, no alcohol, just purpose. Now, let's break down each solo album that he recorded from the years 1993 to 1997. Starting off with Method Man's Cow, which was released in 1994, the first solo album, or the first Wu album from the Wu-Tang Clan. It was a dark, grimy, drenched in reverb. RZA built a sonic dungeon here, using murky drum loops and minimal synths. Tracks like Bring the Pain and Release Your Delph felt like a fog on a back alley block. Meth's charisma matched RZA's eerie production perfectly. Now, moving on to Older the Bastards album, Return to the 36 Chambers, the third version, which released in March of 1995. Pure chaos, controlled madness. RZA leaned into ODB's unpredictability, creating beats that felt both ancient and futuristic. Shim Shim Ya became an anthem despite its lo-fi distortion, and that was intentional. It sounded unpolished because it was pure. Now, in August of 1995, Raekwon the Chef released his debut album, Only Before Cuba Links, aka The Purple Tape. Now here, RZA built the mafioso rap bible, sampled strings, cinematic soul flips, and crime-filled ambiance. This album sounded like a score to a Scarface sequel. Songs like Incarcerated Scarfaces and Ice Cream were masterpieces of mood and sequencing. Now, in November 1995, GZA released his second solo album, Liquid Swords, under Wu-Tang Productions, a philosopher's album. RZA brought cold, dystopian soundscapes to match GZA's cerebral bars. Shadowboxing, Fourth Chamber, and Dula Iron Mike remain some of the most quotable tracks in hip-hop history, and RZA's beats are surgical here. Now, in October of 1996, Ghostface Killah released his solo album, Iron Man, which was a shift to a more soulful production. RZA lays Ghost, Raekwon, and Capadonna with warmer gospel sampling beats. Tracks like All That God Is You, Daytona 500 show RZA's emotional range and creative flexibility. Now, in June of 1997, the Wu-Tang Clan came back together and released their second album, which was Wu-Tang Forever, the culmination of the 5-year plan, a double album, bigger, denser, and more philosophical. RZA brought in more live instrumentation, more experimentation, and layered mixing. He was no longer just sampling, he was composing. Songs like Triumph and Reunited felt operatic. By 1997, RZA had completed the vision, a saga told through 6 albums, each with its own mood, purpose, and lyrical focus, but all unmistakably Wu-Tang. But greatness never comes without sacrifice. During this era, RZA cut himself off from nearly everything outside of his work. He said he treated the studio like a temple, and the Wu-Tang members followed his lead, but the isolation took its toll. After Wu-Tang Forever, tensions began to grow. Some members wanted more independence, others wanted outside producers. The original plan had ended, and so had RZA's full control. Still, what he's accomplished in those 4 years remains unmatched. From 1994 to 1997, RZA created a creative empire, now with a major label's infrastructure, now with a writing team, but with a raw discipline and visionary focus. He wasn't chasing hits, he was chasing eternity. He created beats like scriptures, albums like scrolls, and artists like disciples from a larger truth. RZA once said, and he did. To this day, Cow, Cuban Links, Liquid Swords, and Iron Man are not just rap albums, they're pillars of a mythos. RZA proved that a producer doesn't just make music. A real producer creates a world. So the next time you talk about a legendary run in hip-hop, remember, while other producers were chasing singles, RZA was built in scripture. In 1997, the Wu-Tang Clan was no longer just a name whispered in the corners of New York City. They were everywhere, from the project of Staten Island to college dorms in Tokyo. Wu had become a worldwide symbol of lyrical warfare, brotherhood, and a business model no one in hip-hop has ever seen before. Now, Wu-Tang Forever has just dropped a double album, 27 tracks, platinum in a week. Critics were stunned, fans were loyal, and the industry had no idea what was coming next, because while other crews might have slowed down to celebrate, the Clan did the opposite. They expanded. Again, only this time, it wasn't just a few solo albums. This was the second wave. These are the albums where Wu-Tang's generals fully stepped into their own world. Some evolved, some reinvented, and some struggled, but all of them told us one thing: Wu-Tang wasn't done, they were just getting started. On June 3rd of 1997, the double album Wu-Tang Forever crashed into the Billboard 200 at number 1, selling over 600,000 copies in its first week. A 2-disc, 27-track album. It wasn't just a sequel to 36 Chambers, it was a declaration. Wu-Tang wasn't just here to stay, they were here to dominate. Now RZA, aka The Abbot, took the group's production into darker, more cinematic territory, on where the dusty basement-style loops of 1993. Now you had layered strings, area pianos, and soundscapes that felt like they were ripped from the martial arts epic and dropped in the middle of a grimy New York alley. It was the sound of Shaolin maturing. Tracks like Triumph, a 6-minute barrage with no hook, showed the clan wasn't bending to the industry rules. Every member was on the track and they sharpened their swords. Inspector Deck's legendary opener, Ghostface Killer's vivid slang, Jizz's precision, Meth's charisma, even Capadonna, now a semi-official 10th member, getting his shine. And the results, over 4 million copies sold in the US alone. Grammy nominations, world tours, merchandise deals. Wu was now more than a rap group, they were a brand. But here's the thing, Forever wasn't the end of the story. It was a launch pad, because after Forever, the RZA's 5-year plan entered the second act, the second wave of solo projects. East General and even the affiliates stepping out to build their own empires and test the strengths of their name without the safety net of the whole clan. And first up was the man with the golden voice and the smoky charisma, Method Man. 4 years after the release of Tikal, Method Man returned with something different. November 17th of 1998, Tikal 2000, Judgment Day hits the shelves, and it wasn't just an album, it was a movie in audio form. Album was drenched in apocalyptic energy, skits, sound effects, and a theme that felt like the end of the world was here, and Meth was our tour guide through the chaos. With RZA, True Master, Fourth Disciple, and Mathematics behind the boards, the production was dense, layered, and often haunting. This wasn't your typical late 90s shiny suit rap. Judgment Day debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and quickly went platinum, proving that Meth's charisma and star power were strong enough to carry even the most experimental concepts. Tracks like Judgment Day, Dangerous Grounds, and Breakups and Makeups featuring D'Angelo showed different sides of him, ranging from aggressive battle raps to soulful confessionals. But the real standout was Meth's presence. He could be playful, threatening, and seductive, sometimes all in the same verse. And while some critics called the album too long, too heavy on skits, or too concept-driven, Wu fans appreciated it as an experience more than just a playlist of songs. Meth's second album wasn't just about chasing radio hits, it was about building a world. And in the Wu-Tang blueprint, that mattered. Because a Wu album wasn't just a product, it was a chamber, a self-contained universe that fed back into the mythos of the clan. But while Meth's return felt like a blockbuster, the next general to step out had something different in mind, Raekwon the Chef. He was about to test the waters without the RZA. November 16th of 1999, Raekwon the Chef returns to the solo kitchen. But this time, there's a key ingredient missing. 4 years earlier, Raekwon dropped Only But For Cuban Links, a cinematic masterpiece forged in RZA's Sonic Dojo. That album alone set the bar for Wu-Tang's solo efforts. So when fans heard Ray's second LP and Mobilarity, they expected more Purple Tape magic. Instead, they got a different recipe. For the first time ever, RZA was absent from the core Wu-Tang solo album. Instead, Ray enlisted producers like the Infinite Architects, 6 July, and Easy LP. The sound was cleaner, less dusty, more polished. But that also meant it lacked the raw grit that RZA's beats brought to the Cuban Links. Lyrically, Ray was still in top form, spinning street narratives, hustler philosophies, and coded slang. Tracks like Live From New York and All I Got Is You Part 2 showed his pen was sharp, but the cohesion that glue RZA always brought wasn't there, and fans noticed it fast. Critics were split. Some appreciated Ray's attempt to expand beyond the Wu's formula. Others saw it as proof of just how much RZA's production was tied to the clan's magic. Commercially, it didn't match the success of his debut album, but it still solidified Ray's reputation as a top-tier storyteller, even without the Abbey behind him. In hindsight, Immobilarity was a pivotal moment. It proved the Wu's general could operate outside the traditional sound, though not without risk. And while Ray's second effort didn't match his first, it set the stage for his eventual return to form years later. But if Ray's follow-up left fans conflicted, the next general's second album will blow the doors off the hinges. Ghostface Killah was about to drop one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. On February 8th of 2000, Ghostface Killah steps back into the spotlight for his second solo mission. His debut album, Iron Man, had been a fan favorite, but Supreme Clientele, that would become legend. From the moment Numbed kicks off, it's clear Ghost is operating on a whole different frequency. His slang is dense, his imagery surreal, his emotion raw. He wasn't just rapping, he was painting movie murals with words. Part of the magic came from the beats. While RZA was still at the helm for several tracks, One, Mighty Healthy, Stroke of Death, he also let in other producers like Mathematics, Juju from Beatnuts, Carlos Best, and The Blacksmiths. The result, an album that sounded timeless but still undeniably Wu. Ghost took risks. Apollo Kids was a full-on braggadocious anthem. Child's Play was pure nostalgia, and We Made It featuring Ghost in reflective mode proved he could go beyond street tales into full storytelling mastery. Critics didn't just like Supreme Clientele, they worshipped it. Many called it the best hip-hop album for the year, and some the best Wu release since 36 Chambers. Ghost's charisma, unpredictability, and unmatched slang cemented his place as the clan's most colorful MC. Commercially, it went gold. Culturally, it went immortal. Ghostface became a hip-hop folk hero, someone who could carry the Wu flag even as the industry shifted into a new millennium. But Ghost wasn't the only one going up in this era. An affiliate, already a fan favorite from Ice Cream and Went to Wars, was about to drop his debut album, and he came swinging for the fences. Enter Capadonna. On March 24th of 1998, the unofficial 10th member of Wu-Tang Clan finally steps out with his first solo album, The Pillage. Capadonna wasn't just stepping into the ring. He was ready to claim his spot. Capadonna's rise had been gradual. Known for standout verses on tracks like Winter Wars and Ice Cream, he brought a uniquely off-kiltered, almost hypnotic flow that both intrigued and challenged listeners. The Pillage took that raw energy and stretched it into a full narrative. Produced largely by the RZA and True Master, the album was a classic Wu mix of sinister melodies, sharp drums, and cinematic skits. Tracks like Slang Editorial and Run showcase Cap's storytelling, gritty tales from the streets with an unusual cadence that demanded attention. Critics were mixed. Some found his style abrasive and unpolished, but the hardcore Wu fans saw something else: authenticity. The Pillage went gold, a major accomplishment for a debut album, proved that even on the fringes of the clan, the Wu magic ran deep. Cap was loud, proud, and unapologetic himself, a perfect complement to the clan's diverse roster. While not a commercial juggernaut, the Pillage solidified him as a unique voice in the Wu dynasty, a wild card that kept the group's sound unpredictable and alive. But while Capadonna was bringing raw street grit, another general was quietly ready in his debut album. U-God, the Golden Arm Warrior, stepped into the spotlight with Golden Arms Redemption. On October 19th of 1999, U-God, one of the Wu-Tang's most underrated voices, finally steps in the solo spotlight with Golden Arms Redemption. After years of heavy Wu contributions, it was time for the Golden Arm Warrior to tell his own story. U-God's style was instantly recognizable, deep, commanding, and slightly gravelly, but his debut album was more than just his voice. It was an effort to showcase versatility as both a lyricist and a storyteller, while still firmly rooted into the grimy Wu-Tang sound. The production came largely from RZA and True Master, with Inspector Deck also contributing. The beats were dark, moody, and cinematic, perfectly matching U-God's style. Songs like That's Gangsta and Bizarre stood out for their street narratives and catchy hooks. Commercially, Golden Arms Redemption didn't make a huge wave, but it went on to earn respect among hardcore fans who appreciated his raw energy and authenticity. It was a sound for a warrior claiming his redemption, not with flash, but with steady strength. In the crowded world of Wu solo projects, U-God's debut album proved that he wasn't just a supporting character, he was a vital piece of the puzzle. His album was a reminder that every general in the clan had a unique voice worth hearing. Next up, though, is a rebel INS himself. Inspector Deck finally dropped his long-awaited debut album, Uncontrolled Substance. On October 5th of 1999, Inspector Deck, the lyrical assassin known for his opening triumph verse with one of the greatest verses in hip-hop history, finally released his debut solo album, Uncontrolled Substance. Deck's journey to solo superstardom was anything but smooth. His album was set to drop in 1995, but a studio flooded destroyed much of the original material, forcing him to start over. But when it finally arrived 4 years later, fans got a record full of sharp bars and rugged production. Unlike previous Wu-Tang solo albums, this album didn't have that much production from the RZA, just one track he did. Instead, Dex tapped into the mix of producers, including Pete Rock, Fourth Disciple, and The Mathematics, giving the album a unique but cohesive sound. Lyrically, Deck was in top form, delivering razor-sharp punchlines, intricate wordplay, and vivid street tales. Songs like Word on the Street, Movers and Shakers, and Show and Prove highlight his ability to command attention with every line. Though the album didn't achieve massive commercial success, it solidified Inspector Deck as a solo artist with serious lyrical prowess, capable of carrying his own project without leaning heavily on the Wu brand. In the Wu-Tang universe, Deck's uncontrolled substance was a testament to patience and skill, proof that sometimes the sharpest weapons take the longest to polish. And finally, the man behind the boards, the mastermind himself, the RZA, steps into his own spotlight with a solo album unlike anything the Wu has ever seen. November 24th of 1998, the RZA, the mastermind, the abbot, the sonic architect of Wu-Tang, unleashes his solo debut under the alter ego Bobby Digital. And this wasn't just an album, it was a science fiction saga set to music. Gone were the dusty samples and kung fu saw of classic Wu. Instead, Digital Bobby, or Bobby Digital, was a bold leap into the future. Futuristic beats, electronic textures, and abstract storytelling. RZA crafted a concept album that followed the adventures of the digital alter ego in a cybernetic world. Tracks like Bobby Digital in Stereo and Love Jones showcase a playful yet dark RZA, wrestling with themes of temptations, identity, and survival in a technological landscape. The album was chaotic, unpredictable, and unlike anything hip-hop has ever seen. Critics were divided though. Some applauded the innovation and risk-taking, others found it confusing or unfocused. But fans of RZA's visionary style embraced it as another piece of Wu-Tang's puzzle, an evolution of his creative expression beyond group boundaries. With Bobby Digital and Stereo, RZA didn't just drop an album, he expanded the Wu-Tang's universe, proving that even the Klan's leader was unafraid to experiment and redefine what hip-hop could be. By 1999, every Wu-Tang member had carved out their own lane, and while Method Man had the charisma, Ghostface had the emotion, and Raekwon had the crime sagas, GZA was Professor, the quiet intellectual who turned verses into lecture. Released on June 29th of 1999, Beneath the Surface came 4 years after the critically acclaimed Liquid Swords. It wasn't a flashy return, it was a calculated one. The production was mainly handled by Mathematics with contributions from the RZA and other Wu affiliates, creating a stripped-down, almost skeletal sound. This was a thinking man's record. On tracks like Amplified Sample, GZA spit with trademark precision, weaving layered wordplay over dusty beats. Publicity turned media outlets into chess pieces, while Crash Your Crew brought a darker, more aggressive energy. Beneath the Surface didn't try to catch radio hits or chase them either. It was a deliberate album for the core Wu-Tang audience, those who value lyricism over trends. And in a year when mainstream rap was getting shinier and glossier, GZA doubled down on the shadows. It was proof that the GZA didn't need to reinvent himself. He just needed to keep sharpening his sword. Now, if Return to the Thirstiest Chambers was a chaotic gospel, then Nigga Please was the book of revelations, unpredictable, surreal, and impossible to ignore. Released on September 14th of 1999, Nigga Please dropped right in the middle of ODB's most infamous period. The arrest, the wild TV appearances, the moment that made headlines, all of it bled into the music. The production lineup was wild. RZA, Irv Gotti, the Neptunes, and DJ Premier all brought different flavors, but somehow it still felt like ODB's universe. Tracks like Got Your Money with Kellis became instant anthems, blending the Neptunes bounce with Dirty's off-kilter delivery. Then you had Cold Blooded, a bizarre Rick James cover that no one else in hip-hop would have even attempted, let alone pull off. Every song felt like it was teetered on the edge of falling apart, yet ODB's raw magnetism kept it together. Lyrically, it wasn't about polished verses, it was about energy, emotion, and pure personality. And in the end era, obsessed with polish, Nigga Please was gloriously unfiltered. ODB's unpredictable, but on this album, that unpredictability became the art form. It wasn't a safe record, but it was one that captured exactly who he was in that moment, a wild card in a deck of masters. Together, these albums, the second wave of Wu-Tang solo projects, paint a picture of a group that refused to rest on past glory. They pushed boundaries, explored new sounds, and solidified their legacy, not just as a collective, but as individual forces shaping hip-hop's future. Wu-Tang Forever was more than an album. It was a declaration of power. And the second wave, it was a proving ground, a testament to strength, diversity, and unstoppable creativity of the Klan's members. 10 swords, 10 stories, each cutting deep in hip-hop's history. In the early 1990s, hip-hop was evolving, but Staten Island was still a forgotten corner of New York City. From these streets emerged 9 young men with a vision to change the game forever. They called themselves the Wu-Tang Clan, and with their raw lyricism, cinematic storytelling, and philosophy rooted in martial arts, they became legends. But the story didn't end there. The Wu-Tang Clan influence spread like wildfire. Beyond the original 9, a network of artists known as the Killer Bees began to rise. Groups like Son of Man, Killer Army, Wu Syndicate, and artists like Killer Priest, Shaheem, and the LA Darkman carried the Wu-Tang philosophy in every corner of hip-hop. This is the story of the Wu-Tang affiliates, the compilations, the albums, the solo careers, and the hive of talent that expanded the Wu-Tang legacy beyond imagination. The Wu-Tang Clan arrived in the early 1990s like a thunderstorm over Staten Island, raw, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers was more than an album. It was a declaration for war on the mainstream, a blueprint for how hip-hop could be martial arts, cinematic, and streetwise. But RZA, the de facto architect of the clan, understood something crucial. This was never about 9 men alone. The Wu-Tang Clan was a seed, and its influence needed to grow. He began assembling a network of artists, friends, and prodigies who shared the same vision, who could extend the clan's philosophy into corners of hip-hop they didn't have conquered yet. These artists became known as the Killer Bees. Among the earliest and most prominent affiliates with Killer Priest, his words was dense, spiritual, often biblical, yet grounded in the harsh realities of urban life. Killer Priest didn't just rhyme, he preached, and he forced listeners to think beyond the streets. Then there were Sons of Man, comprised of talented lyricists like Prodigal Son and Hellraiser. Their music blended street grit with metaphysical themes, questioning morality, loyalty, and destiny, all while staying unmistakably connected to the Wu-Tang lineage. Next is Shaheem, aka the Rugged Child, aka the Young God, burst onto the scene at just 14 years old. His youthful energy matched with lyrical skill that was beyond his age. Killer Army brought a militant intensity, their verses painting tactical battles with urban warfare and cinematic detail. LA The Darkman carved his own niche, combining street storytelling with heist-inspiring narratives. Wu Syndicate brought a southern flavor, demonstrating that the Wu influence was not confined to New York City. Even the American Cream Team, a tight-knit collective including Lord Superb and Chip Banks, added another layer to its growing hive of talent. These artists weren't merely underlings or side projects. They were extensions of the Wu-Tang vision. Each lyric, each verse, each album was a testament to the philosophy of the clan, loyalty, discipline, and mastery of the craft. Together, the affiliates transformed Wu-Tang from a group into a movement, from Staten Island legends into a nationwide unstoppable force. By the mid-1990s, the Killer Bees were no longer in the shadows. By the late 1990s, the Wu-Tang Clan had firmly established itself as a powerhouse, but RZA knew that the movement needed more than solo albums. It needed a platform where the extended family, the Killer Bees, could shine. The answer came in the form of compilation albums, a new vehicle to showcase talent, build networks, and solidify the clan's empire. In 1998, the Wu-Tang Clan Killer Bees, The Swarm, arrived. It was more than a record. It was a statement, featuring tracks from Killer Priest, Sons of Man, Shaheem, Wu Syndicate, and Killer Army. It demonstrated that the Wu-Tang influence extended for beyond the original 9. The album captured the energy of a collective at the peak of creativity, each verse like a soldier marching in formation, each chorus echoing in the philosophy of the clan, discipline, loyalty, and lyrical mastery. Then came Wu Chronicles in 1999, a carefully curated collection of solo tracks and affiliate collaborations. Unlike a standard compilation, this album acted as a bridge. It connected listeners to the broader Wu-Tang universe, introducing lesser-known artists while highlighting the established voices. Follows up Wu-Tang Chronicles Chapter 2, released in 2001, reinforced the message. The hive was growing, and every member, every affiliate had a place in the story. Finally, in 2011, Wu-Tang First and Shaolin offered a retrospective vision. By combining classic clan tracks with affiliate contributions, it reminded fans that the Wu-Tang narrative was not limited to original 9. It was a philosophy, a movement, and a network that thrived on collaborations and mentorship. These compilations weren't just albums. They were a blueprint, a way of expanding the influence of the Wu-Tang Clan while giving its affiliates a platform to define their own identities. Through these projects, Killer Priest, Sons of Man, Shaheem, Killer Army, LA The Darkman, Wu Syndicate, and even the American Cream Team found their voices amplified. Tracks that might have been buried in the solo efforts now reached a larger audience, reinforcing the clan's philosophy. It was never about one person. It was about the collective. The compilations became the Hive's heartbeat. The proof that the Killer Bees weren't just a side story. They were a force unto themselves. In the end, these albums did more than showcase talent. They built community, solidified loyalty, and broadcasted the Wu-Tang way to the world. A philosophy of unity, mastery, and artistic excellence that extended for beyond Staten Island. By the turn of the new millennium, the Wu-Tang Clan's extended family had fully emerged. The Killer Bees were no longer shadows in the background. They were artists, leaders, and the innovators in their own right, each contributing to the vast, sprawling legacy of the clan. Killer Priest was among the first to define what it was to be an affiliate. His debut album, Heavy Mental, was audacious, spiritual, and cerebral. Priest's verses drew from scripture, history, and street life, created a lyrical landscape that challenged listeners to think, reflect, and question. In doing so, he set a standard for what an affiliate could achieve: depth, philosophy, and street credibility all in one. Sons of Men followed, blending gritty urban narratives with metaphysical exploration. Their debut album in 1998, The Last Shall Be First, was a testament to the clan's influence. The production carried RZA's signature cinematic touch, while the lyrics navigated morality, loyalty, and destiny. They showed that the Wu-Tang philosophy could be interpreted in diverse ways, yet remain unmistakably connected to the Hive. Killer Army brought a different energy. Their albums, Silent Weapons of a Quiet Wars and Dirty Weaponry, were militant, tactical, and apologetically aggressive. They weren't just rapping, they were painting battle scenes, choreographing urban warfare through lyrics. The group became known for their cohesion, discipline, and unwavering allegiance to the Wu-Tang vision. Then there was L.A. the Darkman. With Heist of the Century, he delivered street stories wrapped in cinematic detail, plots, schemes, and character-driven narratives that elevated him from affiliate to storyteller extraordinaire. Wu Syndicate, hailing from Virginia, added a regional flavor, bridging the East Coast grit with Southern nuances, proving the Wu-Tang influence could transcend geography. Shaheem, aka the Rugged Child, had already made his mark as a prodigy. By this time, he was maturing as an artist, maintaining the delicate balance between youthful energy and lyrical sophistication, a testament to the mentorship and guidance of the clan. Even collectives like the American Cream Team, including artists such as Lord Superb and Chip Banks, contributed to the Hive expansion, solidifying a network of artists who upheld the Wu-Tang's ethos. Each album, each contribution, each collaboration, each verse, the affiliates were not just supporting acts, they were essential components of the Wu-Tang empire. By the mid-2000s, it was clear the Wu-Tang Clan had transcended its original form. The affiliates were no longer secondary, they were the movement's lifeline, the lifeblood, expanding the clan's influence across regions, sounds, and generations. Together, the Killer Bees had created a legacy that was bigger, bolder, and more enduring than anyone could imagine. Some affiliates rose to fame quickly, others quietly built their reputations, adding depth and diversity to the Wu-Tang Hive. These were the unsung Killer Bees, artists and collectives who reinforced the clan's philosophy even if they never achieved mainstream recognition. The American Cream Team was one of these pivotal groups, comprised of artists like Lord Superb and Chip Banks. The collective brought a raw, underground energy to the Wu-Tang network. Their music was unpolished but authentic, steeped in street narratives, loyalty, and a clear connection to the clan's ethos. Though their name may not appear on every fan's radar, their influence within the Hive was undeniable. Brooklyn Zoo, another affiliate collective, carried the Staten Island flavor across the East Coast. Members like Trife Diesel and 12 O'Clock contributed verses to solo Wu-Tang projects, connecting local audiences to the broader movement. Their presence illustrated a crucial truth. The Wu-Tang philosophy wasn't confined to the original 9. It was a decentralized network of family with branches across cities and regions. Other lesser-known affiliates, artists like Roy Fam, North Star, demonstrated the flexibility and the reach of the Wu-Tang empire. Each brought their own regional flavor, lyrical style, and storytelling approach, yet all adhered to the principles of discipline, loyalty, and creative excellence that RZA instilled. Even beyond music, these unsung Killer Bees contributed to the mythology of Wu-Tang. They participated in tours, collaborations, and compilation albums, lending credibility and vibrancy to the Hive. They were the hidden threads that reinforced the structure, ensuring that the Wu-Tang legacy was more than just a group. It was a movement, a philosophy, a blueprint for collective success. The unsung killer bees reminded us that in the world of Wu-Tang, success isn't always measured by chart positions or commercial acclaim. Sometimes it's measured by loyalty, contributions to the movement, and the preservation of a culture that continues to influence generations of artists worldwide. By the early 2000s, the Wu-Tang Clan had transformed from a 9-man group into a sprawling movement, but it was the affiliates, the Killer Bees, who truly demonstrated the scope of their influence through albums, collaborations, and relentless creativity that carried the Wu-Tang philosophy across the globe. Killer Priest, Sons of Man, Killer Army, Shaheem, Ellie the Darkman, Wu Syndicate, the American Cream Team, and countless others weren't just prodigies. They were the ambassadors of a culture. They just kept the fame alive, pushing boundaries in lyricism, production, and storytelling, while maintaining the integrity and discipline of the clan. The collective output proved that the Wu-Tang wasn't just a group. It was a network, a hive, a living organism that grew stronger with each new voice. The impact of the affiliates can be felt in multiple ways. Musically, they introduced new sounds, regional styles, and lyrical perspectives, enriching hip-hop's vocabulary. They inspired countless artists who recognized that the success didn't require following the mainstream. Creativity, loyalty, and vision could build a legacy. Culturally, the affiliates helped make Wu-Tang a household name, reinforcing the philosophy that the clan's influence extended far beyond Staten Island or its original 9 members. Even today, the ripple effects are visible. Modern hip-hop collectives, underground movements, and solo artists are inspiration from the Killer Bees model, a family of like-minded artists working together, supporting one another, and building a dynasty through collaboration and shared vision. The Wu-Tang Clan laid the foundation, but the affiliates expanded the empire, proving that the true influence is measured by not only the fame, but by the enduring impact on culture, creativity, and community. Ultimately, the Wu-Tang Clan affiliates ensured that the story of the clan was bigger than any one album, bigger than any one city, and bigger than any one generation. They turned vision into a movement, a group into a network, and a sound into a worldwide cultural phenomenon. The Killer Bees were and remain the lifeblood of the Wu-Tang Clan legacy. During the 1990s, a bunch of talent was growing and releasing some of the most iconic albums and songs of all time. Artists like Jay-Z and Nas were putting on for New York. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg was carrying the West Coast G-Funk sound, and the South was wrapping up and ultimately took over in the late 1990s with Outkast, Master P and No Limit Records, and Juvenile and Cash Money Records. But in the middle of it all, a 10-man team hailing from Staten Island took over the rap game during the mid-1990s. They came from nothing, the projects, the struggle, the hunger. Just a bunch of hustlers who didn't know that all of their lives were going to change, all because of one man, the RZA. Following the 5-year plan, the RZA opened up the door and carried the movement, dropping gems like Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, Tikal, Return to the 36 Chambers, Only Built for Cuban Links, Iron Man, and of course, Wu-Tang Forever. All of those albums I just mentioned were released between 1993 and 1997, and by then, Wu-Tang was hotter than ever. There was a #1 rap crew in the game, especially during 1995. RZA dropped 4 albums if you want to include Tikal, because it dropped late 1994. Method Man was a star collabing with Biggie and Redman, and Ray and Ghost was collabing with Nas and Mobb Deep. And Wu was going off and popping, making over $30 million a year. So by 1999, Method Man was starring in Belly, The Jamie Foxx Show, and having 2 double platinum albums with Tikal and Tikal 2000 Judgment Day. Raekwon, Ghostface, and Jizzle were gold-selling artists. ODB was a platinum-selling artist, storming the Grammys, and Inspector Deck, Capadonna, U-God, and RZA all dropped their debut albums during the end of the decade. So by the year 2000, Wu-Tang wasn't just a group, it was a movement. But no dynasty lasts forever without change. The new millennium brought a new challenge. The music industry was evolving, file sharing, shifting labels, new sounds. Radio at the time was playing more club records and embraced the shiny suit music. The clan who once stormed the gates of hip-hop had to face a new reality. How do legends adapt when the world moves on? This is the story of the Wu-Tang Clan in the 2000s, a decade of reinvention, separation, tragedy, and endurance. The years where Shaolin swordsmen stepped into a new era, each carrying their own path, yet forever bound by the mark of the W. By the end of the 1990s, Wu-Tang Clan stood at the top of the hip-hop mountain. They had done what no other group had ever done before, turned underground movement into a global empire. They sold millions, told the world, and inspired an entire genre or generation of artists to build collectives, brands, and universes of their own. The late 90s were the empire years.
Wu-Tang Forever had gone 4 times platinum in 1997, earning Grammy nominations and cemented their status as rap's most powerful rap group. But with success came space, and space creates distance. Every member was a star in their own right. They didn't follow the RZA anymore, and besides, he started aiming towards films and movies. Same as Method Man, they both got into acting. Money disputes, creative control, and the question of who led the clan began to loom large. The unity of the Thirsty Chambers days was harder to maintain when everyone had their own vision and their own label deal. By 1999, their Loud Records contract was coming to an end, and the crew had to decide what Wu-Tang looked like in the new millennium. Everyone either dropped their second solo album or dropped their debut album. But the rap game had changed already. No Limit and Cash Money were running the South. Jay-Z and Rockefeller Records had the charts. Eminem was exploding onto the scene with Dr. Dre. Diddy and Bad Boy was dropping hits. And so the once dark, sample-heavy 90s sound was giving way to shinier, more commercial production. Before Wu-Tang released their album, Ghostface released one of the greatest albums of all time in the year 2000. On February 8th, 2000, Ghostface Killah released his second studio album, Supreme Clientele. The album debuted at number 7 on the US Billboard 200 and sold 134,000 copies in its first week of release. And by March 8th, the album would be certified gold. And in that same year, on November 24th, 2000, the Wu-Tang Clan would release their third studio album, The W. Despite the new and more polished sound that the radio was playing, RZA still intended for The W to still have the rugged, unpolished, and raw sound. The album's sonic atmosphere returns to the menacing, low-end driven approach that defined the group's early success. The W debuted at number 5 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 1 on the US Top R&B Hip-Hop Albums chart, selling 301,000 copies in its first week of release. The song Gravel Pit is the one that stands out the most, and the RZA said he even tried to experiment and try a new sound for the song. Also, fun fact, Aaliyah was originally supposed to sing the hook on the Gravel Pit song, but I'm guessing their schedule didn't line up and it never got to happen. But
no, that song was meant for Aaliyah. So,
Aaliyah?
Yeah, we was in the studio, we talked about it, and I said I have this whole Flintstone concept. I'm gonna have you dressed up like
Betty.
Yeah, like Pebbles, but because Aaliyah was, such in great shape and all that, and I just had this whole plan, and she was be like, yeah, we agreed, and it just things went.
So she was gonna sing over that beat and everything, or was this wow?
Yeah.
But even as the album succeeded, some cracks remained. Not everyone was in the same mental space. Old Dirty Bastard was in and out of legal trouble, battling addiction and label issues. Others were balancing family life, business, and creative fatigue. It was the end of one era and the uncertain start of another. Now, those are all the albums that dropped in the year 2000. Now we're moving on into the year 2001. America just faced one of the biggest tragedies of the year, and hip-hop was moving faster than ever. Jay-Z just dropped The Blueprint, and Nas just dropped Stillmatic. The industry had gone digital, and the streets were still turning corporate, and the new generation of rappers, from Eminem to Nelly, were starting to dominate the airwaves, and the Jay-Z versus Nas feud had reached its peak. And in the middle of that chaos, the Wu-Tang Clan regrouped. Only a year after the W proved their power, they went back into the studio to record their fourth group album, Iron Flag. On December 18th, 2001, the Wu-Tang Clan released their fourth studio album, Iron Flag. The album debuted at number 32 on the US Billboard 200 and only sold 153,000 copies were sold in its first week, eventually going gold. However, this was the first Wu-Tang Clan album where ODB was completely absent from every song on the album. The absence of Old Dirty Bastard was impossible to ignore. Still dealing with legal troubles, label conflicts, and personal demons, ODB missed out on most of the recording process. His absence created a void. The unpredictable energy, the wild spark that had always balanced RZA's structure and Ghost's intensity was gone. This was the second lowest selling Wu-Tang album as Loud Records was on the verge of shutting down. Budget cuts, internal disputes, and shifting priorities left RZA and the crew in a race against time to finish the project before label folded. Tracks like Uzi, Pete Gimmering brought that classic Wu chaos back to life, an explosive cipher of lyricism, aggression, and bravado. Rules, channel post 9/11 patriotism and street pride, and Y'all Been Warned sounded like a warning shot to an entire industry. Wu-Tang still stood tall, even if the world forgot. Now, shortly after its Iron Flag dropped, Loud Records collapsed. Without a label binding them together, the clan started to move in their own directions again. Ghostface signed with Def Jam, Method Man stayed with Def Jam, and focused on film and TV. Raekwon began planning his next project independently. RZA dove into Hollywood. The early 2000s marked the end of Wu-Tang's dominance as a single collective force, but not the end of their story. Fun fact as well, Capadonna doesn't appear on the album or the album cover, which was weird because when I was watching the Mike Cement documentary, he was there on set with the rest of the guys. If you search up the original picture or the original photos of the album cover for Iron Flag, it's going to be obvious that Capadonna was removed from the original cover. Now, this happened because after the W was released, Capadonna wasn't satisfied with being in the group. Capadonna wasn't happy that people on the outside didn't consider him as a part of the group and just saw him as an affiliate. Now, this was weird to me as well, because ever since Capadonna appeared on Cuban Links and Iron Man, I always thought he was a part of the original 10. He has some iconic and dope versions on each album as well, so he should still be considered as one of the main members of the Wu-Tang Clan. Now, speaking of Capadonna, he released his second studio album, The Yin and the Yang, on April 3rd, 2001. The album debuted at number 51 on the US Billboard 200 and 19 on the US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. On August 28th, 2001, the RZA released his second studio album, Digital Bullet. The album debuted at number 9 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 24 on the Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. And reports show that the album only sold 13,000 copies in its first week of release. Now, last but not least, Ghostface Killah released his third studio album, Bulletproof Wallets, on October 16th, 2001. The album debuted at number 34 on the US Billboard 200, number 2 on the US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart, and sold 36,000 copies in its first week of release. At the end of 2001, this will be the last year the Wu-Tang Clan would have its original members. By the early 2000s, the Wu-Tang Clan had entered a new chapter, one where the sword of unity had dulled, but the individual blades still cut deep. Each member moved according to his own rhythm, his own vision. Some chased the mainstream, but Method Man, for example, the early 2000s cemented his role as the most visible Wu-Tang member. After the success of Blackout with Redman, Meth became a pop culture icon. Music, movies, TV, endorsements, and constant features, but fame came with a cost. On May 18th, 2004, Method Man released his third studio album, Tikal Zero, the prequel. Tikal Zero, the prequel, debuted at number 2 on the US Billboard 200 and was certified gold by the RIAA on July 14th, 2004. The album received mid to bad reception due to the lack of cohesiveness, production, and the quality overall. It was rushed, a label-driven project that didn't represent him. 2 years later, Method Man would go on to release his fourth studio album, 421, the day after. The album debuted at number 8 on the US Billboard 200 and only sold 62,000 copies in its first week of release. This will become Method Man's fifth album that will hit top 10 in the United States. Method Man also explained the meaning of the title of the album. The national weed smoking date is 420, so I named my album 421 the day after, because after that day, you have this moment of clarity where you're not high and you see things clearly. And 3 years later, on May 19th, 2009, Method Man and Redman will release the Blackout 2 on the Def Jam. The album debuted at number 7 on the US Billboard 200, selling just 63,000 copies in its first week of release. Now, moving on to Ghostface Killah, Ghost was the one that carried the Wu legacy more throughout the 2000s. From the Pretty Tony album to Fish Gale and More Fish, his run was absolutely legendary. He was consistent, blending vivid storytelling with emotion, funk, and street poetry. While others drifted, Ghostface stayed in creative overdrive, and critics noticed. He was often called the most consistent Wu member of the 2000s. Now, in this portion of the video, we're going to be going through every single album Ghostface put out in the 2000s after Bulletproof Wallets. And now, on April 20th, 2004, Ghostface released his fourth studio album, the Pretty Tony album. The album debuted at number 6 on the US Billboard 200 and sold 68,000 copies in its first week of release. August 3rd, 2004, Ghostface group Dido Unit released their first group project, 718. The album debuted at number 66 on the Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart and at number 38 on the Independent Albums chart in the United States. The following year after, he would release a collaboration album with Trife the God on November 18th, 2005 called Put It On The Line. Now, in 2006 was the year for Ghostface Killah, which is quite ironic because 10 years ago, in 1996, his first debut album, Iron Man, would make noise on the charts and sell over 100,000 copies in the first week of release. Now, on March 26, 2006, Ghostface Killah would release his fifth studio album, Fish Gale. The album debuted at number 4 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 2 on both the Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart and the US Top Rap Albums chart. The album sold over nearly 110,000 copies in its first week of release. Upon its release, Fish Scale received universal acclaim, with critics praising the album's cohesiveness, lyricism, and production. In my opinion, the song The Champ, produced by Just Blaze, is one of the best songs on the album. Many of you may disagree with me and say Back Like That is the best song on the album featuring Neo, but nah, like The Champ is just a way better song. Now, in the same year, on December 12th, 2006, Ghostface Killah released his sixth studio album, More Fish. The album debuted at number 71 on the US Billboard 200 and number 13 on the top R&B hip-hop albums chart and number 6 on the US top rap albums chart, and it sold 36,000 copies in its first week, a huge decline to his previous album, Fish Scale, that released early in that year. He also had a song with Amy Winehouse called You Know I'm No Good, which is probably the most recognized song on the album. The following year, Ghostface will continue to release his seventh studio album called The Big Doe Rehab on December 4th, 2007. The album clashed with the release of 8 Diagrams, and RZA had to push the date back because Ghostface was in his feelings. Ghostface also explained the meaning of the album title to MTV News. I dreamt that I was in rehab, but for having mad money, me and a bunch of old white dudes. Dreams. You can't really remember the dreams, but I was someplace. I don't know if it was rehab, but it was mad money in there. When I woke up, the first thing that came to my mind was the Big Doe Rehab. I took a list of titles and wrote them in my mind book, which I might use in the future. The Big Doe Rehab debuted at number 41 on the US Billboard 200 chart and sold about 36,000 copies in its debut week. Now, Ghost went on MySpace to express his unhappiness with the poor results of his album sales due to fans downloading the album illegally. In 2009, Ghostface was dropped his 8th studio album, Ghostdini, Wizard of Poetry in Emerald City on September 29th, 2009. The album debuted at number 28 on the US Billboard 200, number 6 on the top R&B and hip-hop albums chart, and number 3 on the US top rap albums chart. And that will be the last album Ghostface Killah would drop before the decade ended. Next up is Raekwon the Chef. Now, Raekwon enters the new millennium determined to reclaim his corner. After Only Built for Cuban Links dropped in 1995, expectations were sky high for his next album, but Immorality and the Lex Diamond story didn't land the same way. The production lacked the cinematic grit fans expected, and RZA's absence was felt heavily. On December 16th, 2003, Raekwon released his third studio album, The Lex Diamond Story. The album debuted at 102 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 18 on the US top R&B hip-hop albums chart. On November 10th, 2006, Raekwon released Heroin Story. In 2007, he released the Vayasha Mixtape Volume 1 on February 27th and the Vayasha Mixtape Volume 2 on September 25th, 2007. On September 8th, 2009, Raekwon would release his fourth studio album, Only Built for Cuban Links 2. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 and at number 2 on the top R&B hip-hop albums chart, while selling nearly 68,000 copies in its first week of release. In an interview, Raekwon called it the album that brings back the purple tape energy. Now, moving on to the RZA, aka The Abbot. He shifted from beats to the border horizons. He became a student of cinema, scoring films, studying under Quentin Tarantino, and building his Bobby Digital persona. After Digital Bullet, which released in 2001, 2 years later, he would go on to release his third studio album, Birth of a Prince, on October 7, 2003. The album peaked at number 41 on the Billboard 200 and number 20 on the top R&B hip-hop albums chart in the United States. But just a few months prior, RZA released a compilation album called The World According to RZA on April 28th, 2003. Now, in this section of the video, we're going to be diving deep into the films and movies that RZA orchestrated and scored himself. On April 1st, 2000, the soundtrack for Ghost Dog was officially released, which was an original score by the RZA, featuring members of and affiliates from the Wu-Tang Clan. On September 23rd, 2003, the official soundtrack to Kill Bill Volume 1 was officially released, peaking at number 45 on the US Billboard 200 and number 1 on the soundtrack chart. The album was fully scored and produced and orchestrated by the RZA himself. Just a year later, Kill Bill Volume 2 in 2004 was released, and the official soundtrack would be released on April 13th, 2004, peaking at number 58 on the US Billboard 200 and number 2 on the Billboard soundtrack chart. However, in this part, Tarantino's personal friend Robert Rodriguez helped score the film alongside RZA. RZA also had his hands in scores on Soul Plane and Blade Trinity in 2004 as well. Between 2007 and 2009, the RZA would score the amazing soundtrack to the iconic anime Afro Samurai. RZA did both Afro Samurai the album and Afro Samurai Resurrection, and in my opinion, both soundtracks were amazing. Like, 10 out of 10. Some of my personal favorites are Nappy Afro, Fury in My Ivy Wrench, Just a Little Dude Who That Over There featuring Q-Tip, and We All Got. RZA really embodied and captured the essence and atmosphere of Afro Samurai, making a great anime altogether. Next up is The Genius, aka The GZA. Ever the quiet observer, dropped Legend of the Lucas Swords on December 10th, 2002. He then released a collaboration album with DJ Muggs called Grandmasters on October 6, 2005. Then GZA will release the fifth and last studio album called Pro Tools on August 19th, 2008. The album features the infamous diss track towards 50 Cent called Paper Plate. And not gonna lie, GZA killed 50 Cent with this one. Y'all should hear it. And then Capadonna would release The Struggle in 2003 and Slang Prostitution in 2008. You God will release a group project. You Godzilla presents the Hillside Scramblers in 2004 and his second studio album, Mr. Excitement, in 2005. Inspector Deck would release The Movement in 2003 and The Raw in 2008. Finally, Master Kiddo will release his debut studio album, No Set Date, on June 1st, 2004. So, overall, each member was walking down their own path, carrying fragments of the Wu-Tang spirit. But the one thing missing was unity. The fans want another 36 Chambers moment and another 36 Chambers album. But the question still hung in the air, would the Wu ever come together again? The Wu-Tang Clan changed hip-hop forever, and every member had carved their own legacy. But behind that legacy was something missing. Unity. The bond that once made the clan invincible had weakened, and in 2004, that bond will be broken forever. Russell Jones, aka Old Dirty Bastard, the wild spirit of Wu-Tang, was gone. He died from an accidental overdose in the studio just 2 days before his birthday, his 36th birthday to be exact. His death shook the clan to its core. The 2000s had already tested their loyalty. Money, egos, and direction had divided them. But now they had to face morality. They were no longer the hungry hustlers from Staten Island. They were grown men dealing with life, loss, and legacy. By 2006, RZA began planning the clan's next move. It has been 6 years since the last group album, The W and Iron Flag. Fans were hungry for another reunion. But, as always, the industry had changed. Jay-Z, Kanye, and 50 Cent were ruling the airwaves. But RZA still believed Wu-Tang could still make something powerful, something different. The result was 8 Diagrams, released in December 2007. 8 Diagrams released officially on December 11, 2007. The album debuted at number 25 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 9 on the US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. But without ODB, there was a void. RZA left space for his presence on 8 Diagrams, even including posthumous vocals. But the spirit, that unpredictable spark, couldn't be replaced. Wu-Tang without ODB was like a sword missing its edge. His death became a reminder of what Wu-Tang stood for: witty, unpredictable talent, and natural game. ODB was more than a member. He was the heartbeat of the movement. The 2000s tested Wu-Tang's bond. They faced flaws, tension, and the changing tides of hip-hop. But as the 2010s began, something shifted. The new generation. Kids who grew up idolizing the clan started treating them not just as rappers, but as icons. On December 2nd, 2014, Wu-Tang returned once again with A Better Tomorrow. It was their 20th anniversary, a time to reflect, to honor the fallen, and to prove they could still stand together. The album showcased Wu-Tang and their legacy, a mature, reflective project speaking to growth, aging, and wisdom. It showed that Wu-Tang had survived what few collectives ever do: time. Then came the most controversial moment in their history. Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. A secret pressed only once, sold to the highest bidder. Part art piece, part social experiment. It was RZA's statement on music's lost value in the streaming era. The buyer, pharmaceutical executive Martin Shkreli, made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Fans saw it as betrayal, but in truth, it reflected the duality of their legacy, a mixture of art, mystery, and conflict. Even decades later, Wu-Tang was still pushing boundaries and sparking debate. Through the 2010s, each member found a new life. Inspector Deck reinvented himself with the Scarface series, a comic book-inspired collab with 7-Eleven and Esocentric that earned cult acclaim. GZA began touring colleges, doing TED Talks, blending science and lyricism in his talks. Method Man continues to evolve as both MC and actor, starring in The Wire, Power Book 2 Ghost, Luke Cage, and starring in more films and movies alike. Master Killer and U-God quietly released solo project and solid project as well, keeping the Wu-Tang flag flying in the underground. On October 13th, 2017, the clan released The Saga Continues. The album debuted at number 15 on Billboard 200 and at number 1 on independent albums, having sold 19,000 copies in its first week of release, and including streams, it was 24,000 copies. In 2019, the story was reborn for a new generation. Wu-Tang, and American Saga brought the myth to television, dramatizing their come-up, their struggles, and the brilliance of RZA's 5-year plan. For the first time, young fans could see the early Wu-Tang story unfold. The show is really good in my opinion. Season 1 and 2 capture the essence, the struggle, and the beauty, and the bad and the ugly of what everyone in the clan had to go through and finally come together to be as one. Plus, the first episode of Season 1 opened up crazy with Raekwon shooting up Ghost's crib with a tech, and I'm surprised he ain't dropped because he was firing it non-stop. Now, a lot of people are poking fun at Ash's standards. The actor who portrayed the RZA was doing his voice in Season 2 and Season 3. His voice never bothered me as much, but I do see where people are finding the problem at. Between 1993 and 1997, or the 90s in general, which is what Season 2 and Season 3 captured, the RZA spoke more aggressively and not as a damn monk or teacher. If you look at some of his interviews within that time frame, RZA was not speaking as a monk or like in a deep voice. There's a clip of RZA speaking on MTV Rockumentary, and if you compare him to how he's speaking to how Ashton portrays him to speak, it is not the same at all.
And so when you start seeing the garbage, you start to determine the difference. And you're going to make a choice. And then when this start happening, it's going to be another, it's going to keep growing.
Yo, you was always determined to finish them songs, son, every time.
I've been having that same surge of determination lately. Just fucking been feeling like I gotta be on my path.
Some of them dudes was rhyming way off beat. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing,
But you know, when you have a couple of swords and you put them together, and it makes, I mean, it's the Wu-Tang. It's the slang. It's a sword style of rhyming. God.
But besides that, I really do like the show a lot. It's fun to rewatch and see the ups and downs the crew had to go through in order for them to succeed overall. Also, a docu-series was released with mass appeal and Showtime called Wu-Tang Clan of Mics and Men. And yeah, this has to be one of the best documentaries I've seen in a while. The entire clan sat down in a theater to relive their moments before the fame and money, and even themselves at the absolute peak, and of course the inevitable collapse. Also, back in 2008, a Wu-Tang documentary was released called Wu, the story of the Wu-Tang Clan, and it's pretty dope. Just like the Mics and Men documentary, you get to see the rise of the clan, them at their peak and the decline. And y'all, when I was watching that documentary and I got to the part where Papa Wu was talking about ODB's death and what led up to it, it was heartbreaking to see. You could tell he had a lot of love for ODB and wanted him to be around love and the right people during his most vulnerable time after he got released from prison. But regardless, both documentaries were beautifully done and executed. As of 2025, the clan just did their final Chambers tour and it was amazing. Everyone in the clan was doing well and thriving and still continuing to influence the world. Also, Wu-Tang released Black Samson, the Black Bastard Swordsman on April 12, 2015. Also, just 2 days ago, Wu-Tang just announced they're taking the final Chambers tour overseas to Europe, the United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, and Australia. As the 2000s came to the end, hip-hop itself looked completely different. The industry has shifted from CDs to digital, from labels to laptops, from radio to streaming. But even in this new world, one thing remained true. The Wu-Tang Clan was still here, still touring, still influencing, still commanding reverence from every generation that came after them. By the dawn of the 2010s, a new class of rappers, from Joey Badass to Kendrick Lamar, from ASAP Mob to Flatbush Zombies, were openly paying homage to Wu-Tang's raw, unfiltered artistry. Producers began sampling them again, streetwear brands borrowed their logos, the W became more than a rap symbol, it was a cultural emblem representing discipline, brotherhood, independence, and knowledge of self. And even through the turbulence, internal disagreements, losses, label struggles, the clan endured. When you look at RZA's evolution into a film composer and director, or Ghost's relentless consistency, or Method Man's acting renaissance, or Raekwon and GZA's lyrical mastery, you see not just rappers, but architects of modern culture. Every member found their own lane, yet they all trace back to Staten Island, the Shaolin Temple that changed hip-hop forever. The Wu story in the 2000s wasn't just about dominance, it was about survival. They weathered the storm of changing sounds and trends, staying authentic even when the world moved differently, and in many ways, their legacy only grew stronger because of it. Every mixtape, every streetwear drop, every local cipher that echoes their sound carries a piece of the clan. The 2000s may not have been their golden age, but it was a decade that proved the Wu-Tang Clan was timeless. They weren't just a rap group anymore, they were a movement, a living philosophy. In the end, RZA's vision came true. Every member walked down their own path, but when the call-out went out, when the swords had to be sharpened, the clan will always return to the chamber. Because Wu-Tang is forever.
Thank you.